Dr. Michael Shermer.
How we doing? Can you see in the back? Can you hear in the back? I sat back there last night. It was tough. Okay, good. We have some. Before I get started, I want to invite you all to come back to the booth later at some point in the weekend and meet our staff. The Skeptic Society staff is here. I have a new associate director who's taking over a lot of the duties I've been doing. Matt Cooper is back there. Matt's been doing a great job. He set up this beautiful booth, and he's been doing a lot of super stuff for the office. Also, Tanya Sturman, who runs our office back there. And Diane, who's helping Pat, and especially Pat Lindsay, who is up here last night, who drew the picture of the horse. She actually does all the illustrations, almost all the illustrations for Skeptic Magazine. She does those covers. And finally, Daniel Loxton, who has been doing our Junior Skeptic Magazine. If you're a reader of Junior Skeptic Magazine, and I understand there's a lot of non-juniors who are big Junior Skeptic fans, Daniel's here from Canada. He came down. So we have the whole staff here. Do take a moment to go back there. And in fact, let me just take a moment to thank them all. Why don't we do that for Skeptic? Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Matt. Daniel, Tanya. Thank you for them. And finally, I want to thank Randy for doing this, so I don't have to. We've put on 7 of these conferences, and some of you are asking, when are you going to do another conference? And it's really tiring and exhausting, and it's a huge thing to put these things on. And so I'm really glad, Randy, that you guys are doing this. It's terrific. I can just come and have fun. It's great. At the first Amazing Meeting, I gave a preliminary lecture on this topic when I was still kind of finalizing the book, so I could get feedback, and a lot of you gave me really good feedback. So this is the result of that. In fact, the book just came out Wednesday. I just got my first copies on Wednesday, and so this is basically my first attempt, because I'm going to take this on the road here for the next year, to see how this goes. So we'll see how it goes. Essentially, the book is a sequel. It's a trilogy, as it were, to the first 2 books. It wasn't planned that way at all. Why People Believe Weird Things was about, pseudoscience and things like ghosts and haunted houses and spirits and life after death and near-death experiences and reincarnation, all of which I was skeptical about. So people said, well, if you're skeptical about those things, what about, God? As well, I'm skeptical of that. So that led to the second book, How We Believe, which was originally supposed to be titled Why People Believe in God, but then the publisher got really nervous. But if you wrote a book about why people believe weird things and then God, it sounds like it's a sequel. I said, well, it is. Well, we can't do that, Anyway, so it's more than just about that. It's about mythology and storytelling and so on. But the natural response to that was, well, if there's no afterlife and there's no God, what about morality? And that really is what bothers particularly fundamentalists more than anything else about evolution and science, is that if you remove these supernatural explanations and foundations for our lives, what about morality? So that led to this book. That's the sort of the genesis, if you will, of this. I'm going to kind of this is the most boring slide of the day, and if you can't read in the back, it's okay. I'll read it out loud, and boy, it sure looks small when you're way back there. Essentially, in 7 points in this less than 1-hour lecture, I'm taking a moral naturalism approach. That is, it's a scientific approach to morality, in which I argue that there's an evolved moral sense. That is, the moral sentiments evolved through natural selection, operating on individuals, and through group selection, operating on populations. The purpose of this moral sense that we evolved is to solve complex social problems, because we are a complex social primate species, which I should note parenthetically that that's why we're here. We are a social primate species, and we like to hang around with other primates that think like us, and that's what we're doing here. I hate to reduce a fun meeting to that, but that's what it is. And our nature is both moral and immoral, good and evil, altruistic and selfish, cooperative and competitive, peaceful and bellicose, virtuous and non-virtuous. By recognizing we have both of these, all of these, in ourselves, then it solves a lot of moral conundrums, why people do certain things. And then I argued for a form of provisional morality, that is, somewhere between absolute morality and relative morality, what I call provisional morality. That is, moral principles are provisionally true. They apply to most people, in most cultures, in most circumstances, most of the time. I also have a chapter on free will and determinism and moral culpability, in which I argue that humans make free moral choices. Even though we live in a determined universe, I'm what would be called a compatibilist, I guess, I still think we have free will. And thus there is moral culpability. You have to be held accountable for your choices and actions. And in fact, human communities are structured to do just that, to make sure that you are taking responsibility. And finally, the ultimate and final challenge to a non-theistic or a scientific worldview on morality by those who hold a different worldview is that what's the outside source? Where's the objectification of moral principles? Doesn't anything go if there is no God? So I argue that moral principles, in fact, belong to the species. They are outside of ourselves individually. Okay, so let's get started. Number one. So my approach is a scientific approach, a naturalistic approach. You really shouldn't even need to defend this, but the fact is morality has almost never been studied scientifically. It's been largely the province of theologians and philosophers, and hardly any scientists have paid much attention to it at all. So it's a scientific approach. Whether there's a God or not is completely irrelevant, as it is with any scientific theory. It doesn't make any difference at all whether there's a God or not. The science stands or falls on its own. However, I do have to say, if somebody is a theist and a believer, and they wish to believe that the laws of nature and evolution and all the stuff that created the moral sentiments was the way God did it, that's okay with me. I don't really care. I don't have a big dog in that fight. I think to set it up such that you have to reject a theistic position if you're going to take a scientific position is not only untenable, it's a bad idea. It's a bad approach to getting people to think scientifically. In any case, I've long since given up trying to convert, or I should say deconvert, religious people. As some of you know, I used to be a born-again Christian. When I went to Pepperdine University, I was witnessing to people, is what we call witnessing. It's sort of like Amway with Bibles. And you go around knocking on people's door and you tell them, this is evangelizing. You're supposed to do this. If you're really a serious evangelical Christian, you're supposed to do that. So I did. Then I became kind of a born-again atheist, and I went around, those same doors and knocked and said, well, I was wrong. I take this back. Turns out it largely doesn't matter what you do on the evangelistic front. It's hard to convert people one way or the other. The Mormons are not very successful at it. They do it from within through breeding. They do. There are statistics on this. Those young Mormon boys on their bicycles, which I applaud because I'm a cyclist, but they're lucky if they can convert one or two a year. That is the average. It's hard to get people to change their mind on their religious beliefs for a whole variety of reasons I wrote in How We Believe. So really, if you just teach people to think scientifically, then let them come to their own conclusion, and often they do. So anyway, I argue, in fact, that there is no such thing as the supernatural. There's only the natural. There is no paranormal, there's only the normal, and all the stuff we can't explain yet. Morality has always been in that kind of mysterious realm, in which I say, well, we should just take it out of that mysterious realm and study it like anything else. Like political scientists study the political process, psychologists study psychological processes. I always like this cartoon, so I use it often. This is the Sidney Harris cartoon where the scientist is sitting here. And he said, then a miracle occurs at step 2 here. You need to be more explicit at step 2. Then a miracle occurs. Sorry if you can't see that in the back. Essentially, morality has always been in this middle, murky realm. Well, I don't know how it happened. I don't know where it came from. I guess, God did it, or a miracle, or some sort of supernatural being. That's not the case.